Yeah, the title of my presentation is The Search for the Holy Grail of Athletic Training's Over, and I came up with that title because I've been telling my colleagues what we found, and they said, oh, well, it looks like you've found the Holy Grail, because what we've found is something that we've been looking for since I started as an undergraduate student studying exercise physiology. First, a little bit about where I'm from. I'm the director of the Nutritional Physiology Research Centre at the University of South Australia, and there's about 20 of us, and we look at the influence of diet and exercise on health in populations ranging from patients with chronic disease through to elite athletes. And my talk today is more about the elite athlete end of the spectrum, although it does have relevance to the general population as well. So we look at the effects of diet and exercise on various aspects of health, including physical function and physical performance. We're the major research concentration at UniSA that does this, and we got a nice warm glow last year when we found out that we were performing above world standard in terms of our research activities in the latest Excellence in Research Australia audit. So what's the problem that's been dogging exercise physiologists for the last 20 years or so that until now we haven't been able to solve? Well, the problem is that athletes train to improve their performance, but the adaptations that occur that result in the performance improvements occur during the recovery period, not while they're exercising. So it's very important that athletes get sufficient recovery in order to adapt and improve their performance. If they don't get sufficient recovery, their performance isn't as good, and if they continue to get insufficient recovery over a long period of time, that can result in persistent reductions in performance, and if it's very severe, it can lead to overtraining syndrome, where they get sick and it can take months to recover. So if you've invested a lot of money in training these athletes, they might miss a whole year of competition if they become overtrained. At the moment, there's no way of assessing how well recovered or how fatigued an athlete is. So people are using lists of questions: how do you feel today, how you've been sleeping, very subjective assessments, because there is no biological marker available. What we've come up with is a very simple test that's based on measuring heart rate. They've been looking for years, and they've looked at various blood markers, take blood samples, looked at stress hormones, immune markers, which aren't very convenient and haven't been shown to be of much use. What we've shown is that if we monitor someone's heart rate response during a standardised warm-up, the heart rate response changes as an athlete becomes fatigued or becomes fitter. And if you look at the figure on the left here, this shows the heart rate response in response to a standardised warm-up at a fairly easy workload that most athletes would do prior to training or competition. The light blue line reflects the resting heart rate, and then we started them pedalling a bike, and the heart rate increased and then plateaued off at about 110 beats per minute, quite an easy workload. We then trained these athletes very hard for a couple of weeks, so we induced some very persistent fatigue in them. And if you look at the dark blue line, you'll notice that the heart rate increases more slowly. It starts at the same value, finishes at the same value, but the rate of increase is much slower. And what we've done is mathematically model that rate of increase and relate it to changes in performance through fatigue. And the graph on the right shows a linear relationship between the reduction in performance, or the change in performance on the y-axis, and the change in our marker or our assessment of the rate of increase in heart rate on the x-axis. And there was a strong linear relationship. What this means is that we can just get an athlete to measure their heart rate during a warm-up, which they typically do anyway, and mathematically model that to predict how their performance will change based on how fatigued they are or how much they've improved their fitness. So the implication is, if you have an athlete, say in the Tour de France, I've spoken with my colleagues in cycling, and they said, oh, this would be very useful because it's a very long race, the Tour de France, and for example, if an athlete's not well recovered, they may get them to sit in the peloton next day rather than try and win the stage, so they get a rest and recover for the next day. At the moment, in terms of the IP position, PCT was filed in the middle of this year, and the priority date was 12 months before, in June 2010. The patent will be published in December this year, and we're in the final stages of writing the paper up for publication in the scientific literature, which will be submitted next month. We've already spoken to a number of sporting organisations. As I said, they've been looking for this type of technology for a long time. We've already spoken to various football clubs, cycling teams, etc. They're all interested in their technology and would like to adopt it, and we're currently discussing with them getting engaged in some further validation work and trying to improve the sensitivity of our marker. And we're currently seeking licensing opportunities for the technology. There are an enormous number of devices out there already that can measure heart rate, and it's not a very long leap to incorporate our algorithm into those technologies for the rapid assessment of what we're calling our heart rate index. At the moment, it's the only technology in the world that's available that can say whether an athlete is good to go. It has relevance for other populations. Athletes run for medals, soldiers run for their lives. If you're sending a soldier into a combat situation, you'd want to make sure that they're going to perform optimally in terms of their physiological readiness to go. You don't want to send them off to battle when they haven't recovered from their previous missions. And it's also going to be relevant for the general population who are interested in whether they're in good physiological condition today or not. And it's a very simple test to administer with a very fast indication of whether you're good to go or not. There's potential, because it could very quickly go to market through incorporation into existing heart rate monitoring devices, with the Olympic Games coming up next year, to be an ideal time to launch products with this technology in them, so you could capitalise on the publicity that surrounds the upcoming Olympic Games. Thank you very much.